Hello, America. This is Steve Gronka with a red, white, and blue message for the American people. It's time now for the American people to stand up and hold the politicians accountable. Not just talk about it, but do it for real. We're here at the White House today to honor the fallen from 9/11. This is 9/11/2015. And this very crucial time in our history, or at least the past time when 9/11 happened, was a demonstration of why we really need to hold our politicians accountable. Because there are many things that have happened or did happen in 9/11 which need to be addressed by the American people and lead us to things that were not quite right about how this all came about. And in my opinion, should have prosecutions that accompany the investigations that have gone on. So we're here today to tell you that it's time to prosecute politicians and bureaucrats for violation of the oath of office and also for committing other crimes against the people. Because the violation of the oath is a crime in itself. And in the past, we've never done that, or rarely done that. Holding the politicians accountable seems to have been something that causes fear in people because they don't know how to do it, for one thing, and also because they fear the power that the politicians have. But people have to remember that the citizens ultimately have the power. When we rise up and we stand together, the politicians realize that it wasn't them that gave us the people, it's the people that gave us the political system. And the politicians being employed in that system by the people and taking their paycheck from the people are the servant of the people. When you start to look at it in the proper perspective, the fear starts to go away. Although it is a testy area to haul a politician or a bureaucrat into court. But these things can be learned, and we brought cases with us today that show that citizens from across the country, by the hundreds, are starting to bring cases against politicians and bureaucrats that violate the oath of office and commit other crimes against the people. So in our notebook here, we'll bring out a few cases. One is in West Virginia. The West Virginia case is brought against the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of the state of West Virginia, all the judges on the state Supreme Court of West Virginia, and state prosecuting attorneys. The reason for that is that when politicians take the oath of office, and this is also backed up in the United States Code, when they take the oath to the United States of America, that is the name of the incorporated America. That is the name that was established through the Act of 1871, which was the illegal incorporation of America. So when the politicians and the bureaucrats take an oath to the United States of America, they take an oath to the corporation and not to the organic Constitution and to the people. Well, that constitutes fraud. And that fraud then also constitutes treason. So the reason for the case is that in itself, fraud and treason upon taking the oath of office, which makes all these people foreign agents. Secondly, you have at all levels of the state government, and found out by the three people bringing this case in West Virginia, Tom Deegan, Phil Hudak, and Gene Stallnaker, they found in state archives that at every level of state government, there is a private corporation that is run by, or the CEO of that private corporation is the politician at that level of government. So now you have politicians running private corporations, which for the most part people don't know about, because the last thing on their mind to think about is that their politicians have these private corporations running in the background. You would never think that that's the case. But when you go to Dun & Bradstreet, when you go to the other business search engines, you find that this is the case. It's in black and white. So now these are other crimes committed by the politicians of the state and the bureaucrats, because it's a conflict of interest for them to be CEOs of these private corporations, which in effect are skimming money from the public. The politicians are already taking one paycheck from the people, and now as the CEO of these private corporations, they take another paycheck, and that is coming from money that's taken out of the people's pockets. This case was presented to the clerk of the court in the county where the state capital is in Charleston. The clerk of the court, once it's recorded and filed, gives a time period of 30 days for the defendants to respond. If the defendants don't respond in 30 days, and this is for any court case, then the court has a term that's called deemed admitted. Deemed admitted means that if you do not respond to charges in the allotted time, that means that the court recognizes that the defendants show that they have no defense and admit their guilt. The defendants in this case, the governor, lieutenant governor, the secretary of the state of West Virginia, the judges of the state Supreme Court, and the prosecuting attorneys of the state all failed to answer the charges within the 30-day time period. In fact, they were given extra time to answer the charges and never did. So the court has deemed them admitted. They're in default and dishonor. So just 3 everyday citizens like us found out this information, put a case together, brought that case to the clerk of the court. It was filed. The defendants were given the time allotted and didn't respond back. The case is now won. This case now needs enforcement. But that shows you that don't be afraid to bring a case against the people or that populate the structure of the political system in your state or at the federal level. They're as subject to the laws of the land as anyone else. And it's up to the people to hold them accountable, because they certainly have a hard time holding themselves accountable. This is on a par with the Iran nuclear deal, where we're telling the Iranians that they can self-inspect themselves to see whether or not they're in compliance. Now, we can't let the politicians police themselves. The people have to police that, and they have to be the ones, we have to be the ones that bring these cases. So then we have another case where Larry Klayman, the lawyer, sued the NSA on behalf of the Strange family, whose son was killed in Extortion 17, along with 21 other SEAL Team 6 members, and then 9 other members of special operations units from different branches of the military. The investigation done by the military and the government was completely contradicted by all the generals in private meetings with the parents of those that were killed in Extortion 17. When the Strange family started to ask what really happened and why the safety protocols were completely disregarded in that mission, they were being spied upon by the NSA through phone tapping and remotely going onto their private personal computer. So Larry Klayman, on behalf of the Stranges, filed that suit. The suit was won initially. The NSA appealed. The appeal was lost by the NSA. They appealed again. The final one went before the Supreme Court, or actually, the second appeal was lost by the NSA. The Stranges won, and that case is now won. So again, the people can win these cases because the law, what's lawful, is on the side of the people, but the people have to recognize that and take advantage of it. In fact, there's different law books that say, if you don't know the law, if you don't bother to study the law, then too bad. But to those who study the law are the benefits, are the privileges, are the rights. So unless you know the law, you can't exercise what you don't know. And that's what we need to do, is exercise our rights and privileges through the law. You also have the case of Susan Price, whose son Aaron and 5 other men were marched into an ambush in Ganjgal in Afghanistan. It's known as Benghazi before there was Benghazi. Some of the men in that unit had done private missions for people such as now retired General Mark Kimmett and others in the political system and military system that knew about different nefarious activities that were going on as a result of these men's interests that they let supersede the interests of the country and the people. Once these men, these soldiers, have done this work for people such as that, then they know about things that the people in power wouldn't want other people to know about. It's not to their benefit or to the benefit of the power brokers and the people in command that these people would be allowed to stay alive and possibly tell what they know, what they've been commanded to do. So very conveniently marched into an ambush, and then all but two who are actually Medal of Honor winners, Dakota Meyer and Will Swenson, the rest were perished in that ambush. And the information that they knew about nefarious activity perished with them, except that some of that information was filed away in places where it's been accessed by people doing investigations on this crime. And this case will be brought, and the number of people named in this case numbers into the hundreds, because the nefarious activity that goes on throughout our government and military involves huge amounts of people. So you have the case of Aaron Kenefick having been killed, and that case being brought by Susan Price, his mom, and on behalf of the other men that died on that mission. And then we have other cases that people are bringing around the country. Michael School, working in California, working on ways for people to have their rights honored, their constitutional rights honored, by not having smart meters mounted in their homes without their permission or approval. They're starting to process cases out there which are well on their way to being won, and will establish the framework for people to win cases all over the country to have smart meters taken off of their homes. So people, remember, learn about the law. Hold the politicians and bureaucrats accountable. Also, hold accountable the power brokers that manipulate the politicians and the bureaucrats. Because if you don't go after the power brokers too, then they're just going to come back to whoever gets voted into office once you take someone out of office and apply all the same pressure through threats, through luring these people into compromising situations and filming and photographing those situations, and then blackmailing people, and by literal outright threats to the health and life of family members of the politicians and bureaucrats involved. So you have to remember that the people that are doing these nefarious things play a dangerous game, but the lawful system that we have to access can actually be used against them, even though they think they even hold power over that. So bring these cases, start these cases, learn the law, learn how to build a case, bring it to the clerk of the court, have it filed, and then have the defendants answer the charges, or if they don't, they're in default. So we also have another case by a woman from Long Island who was very good friends of a very well-known person. Both of these ladies married men who turned out to be pedophiles. Their daughters now have psychological problems. The woman that we know and talk to is, or has been, is actively engaged in investigating and has investigated and has hard evidence of most of, if not all, the politicians in the Northeast and the bureaucrats involved in child sex slave trafficking and pedophilia. So one of the things that we see often with politicians and bureaucrats and the power brokers is that they feel that they're so much above the law that they can engage in anything they want to, with immunity, with impunity, without regard to others' lives, without regard to people's constitutional rights, without regard to the safety of others, without regard to the health and happiness of others. Complete blatant disregard for people's constitutional rights. But to feed their own selfish desires, their own perverse desires. So our friend, having compiled this case, is now in the process of getting ready to file this case and bring it forward in the courts. She is also working on a number of other cases of abuse of her and others by judges and lawyers. See, when you go into court, the judge will have you think, this is my court. No, the judge never has his court. It's the people's court. People have to recognize we are basically the founders of the system. We gave the system what structure it has. It wasn't the system that made us, that gave us our place in society. No, we gave that its existence. So we need to bring these cases. So whether it's a judge, a lawyer, a power broker, a politician, or a bureaucrat, all need to be held accountable. We all need to step forward. We all need to bring these cases, learn the law, learn how to build a case, bring it to the clerk of the court, file that case, have that case filed by the clerk, and then have the judgment rendered. We're working on enforcement now because naturally enforcement draws their paycheck from the power brokers and the people in the political and bureaucratic offices. So there's no incentive there for enforcement unless they're constitutional enforcement and really side with the people. But when you're dealing with people's paychecks, it's a tough deal. So what we're doing is calling on militias nationwide to step forward, to get behind the people when they do these cases, so that there's enforcement of these defaults when the defendants have no response. Because when you go to the Constitution and you bring up the charges that we've talked about, they have no defense. When you have hard evidence in black and white, there is no defense. When the UCC code in 3 articles shows that the politicians and bureaucrats, upon taking their oath to the United States of America, which is the corporate America, become foreign agents. It's stated right in our own official law code. So people, get set, build up your self-confidence, build your strength, just get that energy going and start holding these people accountable. Let's bring these cases, let's win them, let's drive these people out of office and bring in people that are going to really uphold the Constitution, uphold our rights, uphold everything that our founding documents are about. Thank you. Have a great day.